Okay. All right. We will talk about one of my favorite topics tonight. Yeah. I was thinking that there's a guy. I don't want to give too many identifying markers, but sometimes he parks himself outside of a certain shul. I don't know going to say which community, and the fellow's dressed up in a Superman costume. That's how he's, Jewish guy. He stays out there. He's a small, slight guy, but he's got stuffed up with pillows and stuff like that, like football equipment, like he's Superman. I remember when I was a kid, there was one of the popular TV shows. Look up in there, it's a bird. It's Superman. Clark. These guys walking around with the leotards with the red S, and and in the wintertime with a regular jacket on top, like a regular winter jacket. Can you help out a fellow Jew? Can you help out a fellow Jew? So I used to go Motzi Shabbos to a certain shul, and I would give a class there, Motzi Shabbos. I drive to this place, and before then they would have a shir. They would pipe in a shir from another row. And so I was sitting at a table where he was sitting at the same table. I was preparing, and everybody was watching the first show that was going on, Motzi Shabbos. And and he was sitting over there, and he was listening to a tape recorder. And the tape recorder, they were, he was playing the old Superman episodes from TV. Look up in the air is a bird. Clark Kent and Lois Lane and the whole. And the guy's sitting over there, and I'm preparing, looking into the svarim and preparing my shir, and the guy's listening to Superman and dressed up like Superman, waiting for the crowd to come out that he can ask them for some tzedakah or whatever afterwards. So I asked him, so I didn't want to ignore him. So I turned to him, I said, what am I going to talk to him about? I said, I guess you like Superman, And he said, yeah. And then he said like this, and there's just I like Superman. He said, who are you going to trust these days? That was his, who are you going to trust these days? That was his, in a certain way, I walked away with wow, that's a pretty profound statement, why is he so hooked on Superman? Because it's hard to find, somebody that you can bank on, someone that you can trust in these days. Very, very hard. It's not so simple. So there's a notion that, whoever or whatever we trust in, it makes a huge difference. Whatever we believe makes a huge difference in the outcome and how we invest ourselves, depending upon what it is and who it is that we believe in. So he believes in Superman, so he invests his time dressing up as and emulating, trying to be like Superman, because maybe somehow some parent or teacher or somebody disappointed in his life in some serious way. Again, I'm not going to sit and analyze him. But there is a notion that whatever it is that we believe in makes a serious difference in whatever it is, how we're going to invest how we're going to spend our time, how we're going to invest our lives. I remember when I was just engaged, was it 27 plus years ago, my wife and I, my mother planned to make a wedding shower. You know what a wedding shower is, right? Everybody, gives all these toasters and whatever, and pillows and stuff for the kala, all the stuff she wouldn't buy for herself, whatever, all these different things, multiple toasters, all kinds of stuff. So it was a surprise shower. Ooh, so my job, it's a surprise, is to get the kala there on time. So I'm living in Muncie, my mother's in Westchester, I got to drive to the Bronx. I drive to the Bronx. I said, hi, you want to go out shopping? Cole, let's go shopping. Yeah, shopping, no problem, And then I said, maybe you want to take your mother along. I says, you want to bring my mother along shopping? And my mother-in-law stands there right away. She goes, I'm ready. Had to know something was up right then and there. She was never ready for anything. How did she know to be ready? And how did she know I'm going to ask her? You want to take my mother shopping? That's weird. And then we're driving to a mall near Westchester. I said, oh no, we just passed the mall. The exit over there. No, wait here. Ooh, next thing you know, surprise. 30 friends swallow my wife, my kala, up into this, bubble of warmth and welcoming. And they all, start, singing songs, whatever, and first they tell me, you go. There's no room for men over here. It's a ladies' thing. Okay, goodbye. So I was told to come back at an appointed time in 2 hours. I do my hakafas, I go all over the place, and I come back 2 hours. I come back exactly as appointed 2 hours later. And my next task is to now start to bring all the different things and pack them into the car, all the toasters and all the, whatever it is. And I'm filling up the trunk, I'm filling up the back seat, and piling everything in, and everybody's saying curbside goodbye, thank you, it was so nice, and all the friends have now mostly driven off. And it just so happened that there was one fellow there who was allowed to stay. He was only 8 years old though, so he was allowed to stay. My mother's friend from Long Island, my mother's friend Roz. As a matter of fact, they were all named Roz, from Long Island, and she had her grandson there his name is Derek, that was his name, yeah? And Derek was all of 8 years old at the time, and we were all saying goodbye, thank you very much, it was wonderful, and I saw that Derek was, looking at me, and then he was looking at my bride-to-be, and he was looking at the car, and his eyes were dashing in all directions. And I have to tell you a little bit about my car. Let me just take one little, side excursion over here. I was driving a car. My car happened to be a real, they're out of style now these days, a yeshiva car, right? Remember yeshiva? You guys are not going to be too young. It used to be, nowadays a guy goes on a date, he's in Lakewood or whatever, you rent a nice, Camaro or Camry or something, a nice, balabatish car. If it has a scratch or a dent, you have to polish it, straighten it out. You don't want to be seen like a schlepper in a car that you got to get new, seat covers or something. Back then, it was a mila in my day, when I was a bacher, that you go out in a car that had a lot of dents in it that showed that you were interested in ruchnius, you were interested in gashmius.
It was like that?
What?
It was really like that?
It was like that. You put a safer on the dashboard, and at the junkier the car, the more you were a ben Torah. There was such a thing called, they didn't have leasing cars. Nobody had a new car. Nobody had a new car. You drove a junky car that showed that you were, yeah. I see, we're getting a serious reactions over here. Okay. That's how it was. You drive a nice car. You drove a junky car. So I had a car that didn't go in reverse. It had all kinds of different problems with it. It had more dents than straight chrome. And as a matter of fact, a couple of months before I met my wife, I was coming in not from a date. I was coming in from Manhattan, and I went through the Lincoln Tunnel, and my car went over 100,000 miles. Right, so on the way home back to yeshiva, I picked up some orange juice and some cakes and things. In the morning after davening, I put out a whole spread like a kiddush. Everybody came running to davening. All the rebbeim came afterwards to the breakfast room and said, Label Lam got engaged. Something must have happened, and only to find out that my car went over 100,000 miles. They wished me till 120. The car didn't make it that long, but at least it got me, to the point where I met my wife, Baruch Hashem, and here we were standing at the shower and curbside, and Derek is over there looking at, all of 8 years old, is looking at me. His eyes are darting to the Kala, and he's looking at the car, and he's transfixed, I see, I can read a little bit sometimes heads, and I put questions, and he's got a big question in his mind. I said, Derek, is everything all right? You feeling okay, buddy? What's the problem? He said to me something amazing that really shocked me. He said, how could a beautiful girl like that marry a guy with a car like that? That was that was the question that he had in his mind. Like it didn't make any sense, So we chuckled. It was cute, and I can't tell you how many times I've shared the story. And I remember, thinking afterwards, like, wow, that was, like all the things and all the discussions we had. We remember that very strongly. So why was it so impactful? Because thinking, like, how many seminars, how many classes, Torah classes, is it going to take to straighten out his brain, and to unhook those wires that have been through the insidious methods of advertising, have been now inexorably linked together. That he is all of 8 years old, and he believes that intimacy and happiness and marital bliss and all those good things and togetherness and unity all comes from the hood, the quality of the hood ornament and the car and all those other type of things. It really, how it etches its way into our psyche. What's it going to take to unhitch those two ideas that are not necessarily so from his mind? Right? You understand? And not only that, but he's going to invest the next, I would say often, he's going to have to invest the next 25, 30 years of his life to be able to afford that car, to get that status symbol that when he opens up the doors, now suddenly the music is supposed to turn on and everything's supposed to go in a certain way, And when it doesn't, he's going to say, what's wrong with me? I think I need to speak to a psychiatrist. Like as if there's something wrong with me that, when they get to the dream, it doesn't work. There was a famous psychologist named was Eric Fromm, and he spoke about something called the insane society. What was the concept of the insane society? He wrote a book on it. And the basic premise is that sometimes a person lives up to the values of the society, of the belief system, of the culture in which he happens to be in, and he lives it to the max, only to find out that it disappoints him, that it has a distorting effect on his personality. He becomes a highly effective Nazi. He becomes a highly effective, whatever it is. He reaches the top of his field only to find out that it's lonely and it's sad and it's self-destructive to be in that particular place, whatever it is. Eat your heart out, Michael Jackson, Marilyn Monroe, you name, the American icon that rose to the top in that field or whatever, only to find out that, they had become distorted people. There's a joke they say about a guy that was walking that came to a tailor, and he asked the tailor, "Can you make me a suit, please?" And the tailor made him, a suit, measured him. Back in those days, it wasn't a Sims bash or something like that. You go into the tailor, and he, measures you, and he takes a bolt of clothing, and he cuts a suit. The fella now comes in the appointed date to pick up a suit. The tailor says, "Here's the suit." Step into the fitting room. Guy goes into the fitting room, and he's got one sleeve up to here, almost near the elbow, and the other one is, right at the cuff where it belongs. And then the other side, okay, he, lift up my pant leg, it's like knickers. He's got them up, hanging out by his knee on one side, and the other one is down on the heel where it should be. So he's got one sleeve up too high, and the other pant leg up too high. So he comes out to the tailor. He says, "Look what you did to me. I got a suit here. It doesn't fit. It's ridiculous. It's cut all wrong." He says, "I got to go to this important appointment." So the tailor says to him, he says, "You know something?" He says, "Just pull your arm up a little bit like that. That's it. That's it. Just lift up your shoulder on one side. Now you see the suit fits good. And now bend your leg to the other side. Go up on your tippy toe heel and pull down the leg the other way." He says, "That's it. Yeah. Okay, you got it." And the fellow starts walking out of the tailor shop, and he's going down the street on his way to his appointment with the sleeve exactly where it should be and the cuff where it should be, but he's hobbling like the hunchback of Notre Dame. And behind him now is walking two fellas, and one guy says to the other, he says, "Nebuch," he says, "look at that crippled guy over there." And the other one says, "He sure got a good tailor, though." The tailor's the one that did him in. So here, I wanted to say the same thing. The truth is, it's very sad for me to say it. And I was saying this for many years, for 20 years, since I heard, this kid said that, how could a girl like that marry a guy with a car like that? And we chuckled to ourselves. And a couple of years ago, I was listening to the news, and I said, "Wow!" I heard that a car with two fellas ran off the highway, one of the Westchester Highway, and went into the water, and two fellas drowned. And I find out from my mother that was Derek that was driving in that little sports car. I don't know if he was the driver or he was the passenger, but somehow some little sports car, broke through the railing and went into some deep water, and that was it. And he didn't come out. Somehow his death ended up. He was the only grandson over there, the only grandchild. It was such a tragedy, such a terrible tragedy for the family. But here you have this concept over here of whatever you believe in, that's what you're going to invest in. And actually, the Chovos Levavos says that that's really the formula for Bitachon. Why is it important? This week we speak about the mun, right? Kadosh Baruch Hu brings mun to Klal Yisrael. So it's quite an amazing thing. The whole subject of the mun, the whole subject of Kriyas Yamsuf, of splitting the Torah, of splitting the sea, is also has to do with Bitachon. Bitachon. But Bitachon is a worn-out word. Bitachon really has to do not with, people think about Bitachon like I don't have to do anything. The bum and the Baal Bitachon could look very much alike sometimes, because they might be sitting passive. But the question is, why is the person sitting doing nothing? Is it because he exhausted, he did everything that he should be doing, and now he's waiting for the results? The person had prepared himself. Hasus muchan melachama el Hashem hayeshua. Now that I did everything I could, now I have to wait for Kadosh Baruch Hu who's going to do his part. And therefore, by the Yam Suf, Kodesh Baruch Hu says, let's stop talking, let's take an action. We have an action to do, and that action is going to make a difference. Or is it, that the person is, being lazy, and letting Kodesh Baruch Hu do things when there's something that he should be doing. So Bitachon really has to do with the relationship that we have with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That once we've invested, it has to do with that we trust that we have a partner, and I'm going to do my part, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to do his part after I do my part. But I'm not going to worry about a Kodesh Baruch Hu doing, I'm going to have to do a Kodesh Baruch Hu's part, because once I did my part, Hakol b'dei Shemayim chutz me'ir Shemayim, once I did my part, then I know Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to do his part. Someone who doesn't have Bitachon is going to invest himself in such a way that he's going to try to do a Kodesh Baruch Hu's part, instead of doing his, and he's going to wait for Kodesh Baruch Hu to do his part. Okay, let's put some meat on this bone. The Chovos HaLevavos says in his introduction to Shar Bitachon, he says the following thing, unbelievable thing. 3 steps. Let's break it down. He says, "V'iyafshar lo la'adam lios meshuchar midaigos." He says, step number 1, it's impossible for a person to be free from worry, ela imkein hu botech b'Hashem, unless he's botech in Hashem. Okay, the Chovos HaLevavos is a Rishon. Okay, and he says that it's impossible for a person to extract himself from the flood of worries, unless the person is botech in Hashem. Why? That's actually step number 2. He says because if a person there are 80 million little factors that have to go right in the course of a day. Yeah. In order for a person to get through a day. A person to be successful in business. You can plan all you want, you make a business plan, but there has to be all these global things that are beyond our reach and beyond our control that have to go correct. If a person feels he has to control all those factors, he has to be in control of all those factors, right? So he's going to make himself crazy trying to control things that are out of his control. I think it's one of the famous statements that they say at the AA and the OA meetings and all the GA meetings. A famous statement from, what's his name? Okay, it slipped my brain over here. Okay, they say, God grant me the serenity, right? You've heard this statement, to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah, you ever heard these statements before? Reinhold Niebuhr, famous, whatever it is, minister, whatever. That's the one who came up with the statement. You say the AA meetings. Yeah. So, and truth is, in meeting with people, you find most of the problems that I've heard about when sitting with people is people spending so much effort trying to change their things. Trying to work up the courage to change things that they don't have the ability to change, and also giving up on. And not having the courage to change, to accept the things that God grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change. So they're busy trying to work on the serenity to accept the things they should be changing, and working on the courage to change the things that they have no business changing, that it's not in their field, it's not in their realm, because they don't have the wisdom to know the difference. To know the difference. What's my job? What's a Kodesh Baruch Hu's job? If a person doesn't have Bitachon in Hashem, he's going to spend his time trying to control all the factors in the universe to make sure that things turn out the way that he needs them to turn them out. Let's see. The Chovos HaLevavos is going to explain factor number 2. Why is it number 1? Therefore, he says it's impossible for a person to be free from worries if he's not botech in Hashem. And why is that? He's step number 2, and that is mipnei she'im hu lo botech be'elokim hu botech b'mashu acher. Because if he's not botech in Hashem, he's by default botech in something else. Everybody's botech in something. Everybody's relying on something. Everybody's resting his hopes and resting his dreams and is believing in something. And what is that? Or b'nei Adam, he trusts in people. I believe in people. I believe in the goodwill of people, right? Oh, ba'oshro, or I got wealth, I got money in the bank, I got stock, I have an offshore account, or b'chochmaso, or I'm a smart guy, or I'm good looking. I can talk my way into situations. I can talk my way out of situations. Or I have power. I have money. I have a gun. I can do stuff. I have people. My people are going to help me. I got I belong to the right party. I belong to and now we're in. Now we're in power. Oh, I have stuff. I can do stuff. I have connections. I have political connections. I have somebody who's going to take care of my tickets. I don't have to worry if I'm going to get a ticket. I know a judge. What everybody's got. Everybody's got something. And Uncle Sam. I believe in Uncle Sam. A lot of people botech in Uncle Sam. That's the next big bubble, by the way. That's the big bubble. Get ready. That's the next bubble. It's the government is going to be unsustainable. There's going to be more people relying on the government, and then the bubble's going to burst. Right? You have to be a genius to know that. That's what's going to happen. That's what's happening right now, right before our very foolish eyes. That's what's happening. So if a person's not botech in Hashem, they're botech ben mashu acher. They're botech in something else. They're relying on something else. Now comes the third statement. These are three straight lines from the Chavos Levavos. Step number one, he says, impossible person to be free from worry unless he's botech in Hashem. Because he's going to be making himself crazy, worrying about and dreaming and thinking about things that are out of his control. And number two, if he's not botech in Hashem, then by default, what puts a smile on his face, what gives him confidence in the day, is because he's got something else. He's got money. He's got a credit card in his back pocket. He's got somebody who's gonna pay for him and take care of him, who's gonna back up his loan. And number three, he says, and somebody who believes in something or somebody else other than Hashem. Listen to this. Elokim, listen, this is what we call hashgacha over here. This is really the yesod, the dynamics of how Bitachon works. And then we understand everything after this. This is a new pair of glasses. And someone who's b'teich and something or someone other than a Kodesh Baruch Hu, Elokim meiser mimenu hashgachaso. Kodesh Baruch Hu removes his hashgacha from him, from that person. V'ozav oso biyad mi shebatach alav, and he puts him into the hands and into the control of that thing that he's b'teich in, and says, now, if that's what you believe in, that's your God, that's your baby, so let him take care of you. You believe in your good looks? Let's see how long your good looks are going to take care of you. Right? Young lady thinks she's going to get along because she's good looking. Wait till she gets her first gray hair. Wait till she starts to get her wrinkles. That's why you go to certain places all over the place. And in certain cities, I was passing by some town, and it's Tina nails, it's nails, and it's tanning, and it's facelifts, and it's everything. Such an emphasis on beauty, 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 because everybody's relying on the beauty. And see how long the beauty. We say sheker achein v'hevel yofi ishi yiras Hashem hitas halo. In the end, that's the real value over there. But someone who's b'teich in something other than a Kodesh Baruch Hu, so they become desperate in that area. So certain things like that we can understand. We understand if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Yeah? If you want to be the tough guy, you want to be a mafia guy, so they don't die in nursing homes, mafia guys. They're sitting there twirling their spaghetti in front of a restaurant window. Suddenly somebody comes by and they meet up with a violent death. Terrorists also, they think they're going to bully people around, and they end up getting bullied around. That's how it works. But I remember I thought of this piece over here in the Chavos Levavos. It flashed into my mind. The morning, you guys are not going to remember. You're too young. I have such a young crowd of here. Maybe some people are going to remember. I don't know. The day that Lady Di. Remember Lady Di? Lady Di? Lady Diana, yes. Lady Di. Diana, right? What? Yeah. Why? You remember? Why did she die?
Sunday. Hey, what's the last thing going through her mind?
Why did she die?
What is the last thing on her mind? The steering wheel.
The what?
Nothing. I remember that as 19.
I don't know about the steering wheel.
She died from a car crash.
She was in a car crash.
Fire.
So the first thing, they hit a pillar going in France. So what was it? What entered into my brain over there? So I remember speaking to a relative. Why did she die? Why did she die? Diana. Why did she die? Diana. Why did she die? Why did she die? Why did she die? Oh. And people say, she was like, suddenly she was saintly, and all these different things. And I remember one relative called me up. She was so great. She was great. I said, what'd she do? She did this for that cause and that cause. I said, my wife does more in one morning than she did in the last 30 years. Getting the kids off to school. It was a little bit overblown. I said, but the first thing that entered my mind was this piece of Chavos Levavos over here, where he says that the person is not free from worry unless he's b'teich in Elokim. And if he's not b'teich in Hashem, he's b'teich ben mashu acher, he's resting on something else. And if he's resting on something else, then the Kodesh Baruch Hu removes his hashgacha and puts him into the hand of that thing that he relies on. And I was thinking to myself, we all understand, we said before, that if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But there's also a premise, if you live by the media and public opinion, then you die by public opinion. That's the first thing that entered in my mind. Why did somebody die? Everybody wanted to investigate. Was it the paparazzi that was chasing? Where was the, what was it? And I was thinking that if she just would have been a nice little, column maidel or some little, Beis Yaakov girl coming home with a couple of loaves of bread and some goodies for Shabbos, and suddenly somebody jumps out from behind a bush with a camera and says, "Let me take a picture of you." You don't get into a car and go 120 miles an hour into a tunnel to get away, right? You say, okay, which paper am I going to be in? The Rockland Journal News? Oh, I'm going to be in the, what's that?
That's what happened with them.
They were being. She was with somebody, and they said, "Let's get out of here. We have the paparazzi, the reporters or something are following us and they're taking a picture. So what's the emergency to get away?" And the answer is because for 20, I remember when she got married. I remember it was 32. It was at that time like 32 years ago. So I remember the wedding. And we were sitting with friends out of college, and we were in Manhattan, and we were watching this coronation. And the carriages. It was like out of a fairy tale. And the newspapers were every time you went through a grocery store and you went out, they have the newspapers over there, and they said, she was a princess. After a while, the person starts to believe all those things, all those nice things that they say about you. That every word you say is poetry, and every step you take is ballet, and they're building this little bubble, this bubble that they're building. And what kind of bubble are they building? So the news media is building a bubble the same way that the farmer, it's got this big cow, and he keeps on feeding him, and he's feeding him, and he's feeding him. He says, "Wow, the farmer really likes me." And then one day, the shochet shows up, says, "Okay, we're ready for you. Now we're going to make, a couple of good rib steaks out of you, boy." And he was being said, "Wait a second, I thought I was your favorite cow. You are my favorite cow for slaughtering and slicing." So the news media, they spend 30 years fattening you up, and 20 years fattening you up, saying, "Isn't she beautiful? Isn't she great? And then she gets her first wrinkle. Now we're going to take her, and her marriage fails. Now we're going to tear her apart. We're going to find every little wrinkle and every little fault, and we're going to rip her to shreds. Now we're going to slaughter her." So now they come with the bright lights, Sunset Boulevard, The beauty queen, now has some wrinkles, and she wants to stand in the shadows only. She doesn't want to be seen. The famous movie Gloria Swanson. And now we have to get out of here. We don't want to be seen and have anybody else, misshape the image that I've spent my life believing that that's what I really am. So let's get out of here. I got to run from here. I got to run from here at 120 miles an hour into a pillar, and then die in a fiery explosion, whatever it is. Yeah, because if the media has the power to make me, then the media has the power to break me and destroy me. Yeah? You understand it? That's what we call it. So whatever a person is boteach in, then that's what gains control over them, because that's what the person feels invested in. That's what it's all about. I want to say, what does it mean, bitachon? We throw this word around. So bitachon means boteach means to rely, to rest on something. And the premise is, I was thinking, I saw in halacha that when a person's davening, although many people have a Shtender in front of them when they're davening, right, Shemon Esrei, during Shemon Esrei, you're not allowed to be leaning on the Shtender. Take a look around. Something I could see a couple of people, mistakenly, they're leaning on the Shtender, with the weight. Now, what's called leaning on the Shtender? You can have a Shtender in front of you, but leaning on it means if you happen to be pressing on it in such a way, you estimate that food would be taken away suddenly, you would lose your balance and you would fall away. That's called leaning on it. If you'd have your hands on it and suddenly be taken away, so you wouldn't become destabilized, you wouldn't become imbalanced because of it. So that's called that you're not leaning on it. You hear? So if a person has money in their pocket, if they have good looks, if they have intelligence, if they have connections, if they have a good name, in the world, but if it would be taken away suddenly, and any of those pieces would be taken away, they wouldn't become destabilized. So it's okay to have those things, right? But to rely on that now suddenly becomes, now anybody who's going to mess with one of my good customers, anybody who's going to talk badly to one of my connections, now suddenly I become desperate because those become my values. I'll do anything to defend that territory. I'll do anything to defend that relationship, and now that becomes my little God. Because if I don't believe in a Kodesh Baruch Hu, I'm believing in something else. Now I have to defend that something else because that becomes my source. That becomes my lifeline. You understand? So that's the premise. There's also, it's unbelievable statements that we have from I think it was the Mesha Chochma, Reb Meir Simcha, from Vinsk, who wrote as a 19-year-old Talmud scholar, a young fellow. I think he understood this basic premise over here of the Chovos Levavos. I think this is all really he needed. He didn't have to be a Novi, but he just had to be a Talmud Chacham to this extent to write. In his commentaries on the Tochacha, I'm sure it's already famous already, he writes that in Germany there was it was stricken out. There was a fellow's name was Abraham Geiger, and he took the word Yerushalayim out of the Siddurim, the first Reform generation over there, because they said, we're in Germany. Berlin is our Jerusalem. Berlin is our Jerusalem. And since they took Berlin, they took Jerusalem out, and they said, Berlin, we're home. We're in Germany. We've been accepted, right? And he said, because the modern Jew thinks that Berlin is their Jerusalem, he said, a fierce storm of destruction will emanate from Berlin, and will leave but a scant few, and they'll travel to other places, and they'll start up. He saw that this was the pattern of Jewish history, that, Jews get a little comfortable in a place, and they feel that this is home. Actually, the Gemara, Rabbi Label Lam tells a story about some Talmidei Chachamim who were out at sea and they were on a boat and they were hungry to get something, to eat a hot meal. And so what happened was they took some fish and they were on a wooden boat. They couldn't make a fire on a wooden boat, but they found an island and they got on this island and they started stirring up a big fire to cook some fish, only to realize that the island that they were on was the back of a big fish. And when the big fish felt the heat on his back, it went back underneath the water to extinguish the fire, and now the rabbis found themselves floundering in the water, this big fish tail over here. And he says, and if it wouldn't have been for the boat, he says, then they would have been drowned. And the Gra explains in this, the juggler and the king, this story that the Gemara tells you, Rabbi Label Lam, it's a parable to explain that Jews go to a place, they get settled down in that place, they say, ooh, this is where it's happening, We're here. Berlin is Jerusalem. America, New York. Huh? We're here. And they get so comfortable there, and then the fish whose back they were on, that they presumed was terra firma, it was firm land, now suddenly gets uncomfortable, and they found themselves that it wouldn't be for the Torah, the boat was the Torah, then they would have been lost. We have to find ourselves, in order to navigate through the rough seas of life, we've got to find our way back to the Torah.
But on one hand, it's a very good quality, because that means that people are very adaptable and they'll be happy wherever they're going to go.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Why be miserable where you're going to go? If you're going to be miserable,
yeah. So we're saying. So we're talking about over here. We're talking about over here about relying on something. It's one thing is having. One thing is having, and the other thing is relying on. So on the one hand, if whatever a person relies on, the Chovos Levavos says, then a Kodesh Baruch Hu puts them into the hands of that thing that they rely on. So he said, because the modern Jew thinks that Berlin is Jerusalem, then Hashem will leave them into the hands of Berlin in a fierce storm of the Because I'm not playing Navi over here, but to the extent that a person relies on something and realize that this is going to save me, Bibi is going to save me, or this party is going to save me, or this person is going to save me, then they're left into the limited hands and the limited hashgacha of that thing, because that thing by definition is limited. That's why he says in the first statement that we said that Misha Einu B'teich Hashem, Misha, it's impossible for a person to be free from worry unless he's B'teich on Hashem. Because the only one that has control over all the factors that are in the universe in order for a person to feel comfortable to sleep well at night without having to take Ambient, right, is a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if a person is going to rely on something else, so then he says, if they're not relying on Hashem, they're relying on something else. And Hashem, if they rely on something else, is going to leave them into the hands of that thing that they're relying on, whether it's their good looks or their money, and let's see how far that thing will take them, right? Let's see how far your money will take you until suddenly you realize that money can only help me up until this point, or good looks can carry me to this point, or a glib tongue, or good connections, or being a part of living in the right neighborhood can only carry me so far. And then what happens without a Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? So we limit. So the negative side is we see what happens, when people are relying on the wrong stuff and how they run into the little dead ends, and how even cultures and communities have run into dead ends thinking that communism was going to save them, right? We can go all all throughout history. Or the golden calf was going to save them. Or this thing was going to save them. On the flip side, on the positive side, right? Not just we should walk out here feeling like cynical people. I remember one time I was in Eretz Israel for a summer, and someone told me that there was a shir that was taking place, and I wanted to go see the shir right over in that building over there. Uri Zohar gives a shir. Everybody heard of Uri Zohar? Harav Uri Zohar, right? He was the top Israeli comedian, entertainer, actor. I don't think in American culture we ever had anybody who was all these things, all wrapped up into talk show host, actor, entertainer, avant-garde. He was everything, all wrapped up into one. And he got into a slugfest, a debate with an old rabbi who he thought was a dinosaur, and he'd knock him out. I remember reading the biography and hearing him speak about it a couple of times, once at Carnegie Hall, and he thought that he's going to wipe the floor with this rabbi. I'm a sophisticated, modern fellow. And what does this guy know? And he finds out that he says, Mi ha-tipshim rabosai. Who are the tipshim? He says, Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Shlomo Melech, David HaMelech, Rashi, the Vilna Gaon, Hey Matipshim, Rabozai, Anachnu Atipshim, we are the fools. Oh, I saw he's on fire. So I saw him speaking at Carnegie Hall. I said, here I got an audience. I can go catch him and get a look at Yerushalayim. Uri Zohar. It was a shir in Mesil Yesharim in Hebrew. Hebrew was not so perfect, but I'm going to go to the shir. I'm going to see Uri Zohar. I was comforted by the fact that for years I was giving a Mesil Yesharim shir, and that there was only a handful of people there. So here you got Harav Uri Zohar. He figured there'd be an ulam filled with people. But Mesil Yesharim, that's why it's called Mesil Yesharim. You have a handful of people that show up. And he was giving a shir. And we sat there and I said, wow, great. I went day number one. The shir was great. And I even took a ride with him in a taxi cab just to continue conversation. I want to ask him something. And then afterwards, the next day I show up for the shir. At the end of the shir, he tells a story that shows that he had not lost much of his dramatic flair. He was an actor. And he told over a story. He said that just the week before, he had gotten a call from a friend from his old bohemian days, when he was someone he knew back then. And the fellow called him up in a state of panic, and he explained why the fellow called him. It seemed this guy had gone out to the beach on a Shabbat with his wife, his friend had, and they were out at the beach with thousands of other Israelis on Shabbos Kodesh. And came time now to pack up the picnic basket and the blanket and to wrap it all up and to go back to the car. And this fellow gets back to the car and he reaches into his pocket and he can't find his keys. He reaches in the other pocket, can't find his keys. Shakes his pants a little bit. There's a little dance you do when you can't find your keys. Maybe it fell into the cuff. Maybe it's in the lining someplace. His wife shows up. He says, dear, give me the keys so we can open the car. She says, you have the keys. He says, no, I think you have in your wallet over there, in your pocketbook. So she looks in her pocketbook. It's not here. He says, no, look deeper into the pocketbook. There's layers in the woman's pocketbook. She starts opening zippers and looking inside, outside. There's no sign of the keys. No place. She can't find the keys. He can't find the keys. He says, what do we do with the keys? Who had the keys? He says, you had the keys. No, you had the keys. We can't, let's not play the blame game. Let's find the keys. He starts looking around, searching underneath the wheels and inside underneath the car. He can't find the keys. He's becoming very desperate over here. Meanwhile, people are getting in their car and they're driving away. They're getting in the car and they're driving away. They get in the car and they're driving away. And now the sun is setting. It's Shalashudas time. All over across the land, people are singing Mizmor LeDavid and Lidid Nefesh. And the sun is sitting in the western sky like a giant orange, is ready to descend, and they're about to be plunged into darkness. They're the last car in the parking lot. He's gone, meanwhile, to the spot where the picnic blanket was, where the beach blanket was, and they shook out the blanket. They emptied out the picnic stuff. They went to the garbage can where the refuse was, and they emptied it out, and they went through it, and they dumped it back, and they went through it multiple times. He went underneath and all around the car and felt underneath every part on the floor, underneath the tires, and he can't find the keys. And then in desperation, Uri Zohar describes, he says he went Meshuggah. He went crazy. He became a crazy man. And what did he do? What does a Jew do when he's desperate? He picks himself up and he starts to march back, in the direction of where the blanket was, back onto the beach. But he doesn't stop there. He continues. And he goes out to the water. and he wades up to his thighs. Remember, Uzur got up from his chair at that time and acted, did the whole, the portrayal or whatever. And he says the guy walks up to his thighs into the water like he's about to walk to Italy, across the Yam HaGadol over here, And when he gets into a certain height over there, he lifts up his hands and he says, pointing to the heavens, he says, Elohim, Elohim. He says, give me my keys. Give me my keys. He yells to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A chutzpah. A chutzpah. That's how he talks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, but at that moment over there that he gave out this cry, the first time this fellow ever cried out, there, floating in the water, and touching his thigh, was not a stingray, but there was his keys touching him. And he comes back white like a ghost, and his wife says, oh, I see you found the keys. He says, I found something much more than the keys. And she explains to her what happened. Sunday morning, the next morning, he gives a call to his friend Uri Zohar, and he says, Reb Uri, he says, where do I begin? He says, kashrut, tefillin, tzitzis, Shabbat. He says, you tell me, whatever I'm supposed to do next, he says, I'm ready to do it. Now, it may sound like it's such a, as we say in Yiddish, far-fetched, far-away story, But it's really quite a remarkable story. But it really shouldn't surprise us, because if we say 3 times a day. Actually, the Gemara says, "Kol ha'omer tehillah David shlosh pamim." Anybody says tehillah David 3 times a day, muftach lo shehu ben olam haba, guaranteed to be a citizen of the next world. It's ashrei. And anybody says ashrei 3 times a day, guaranteed to be a citizen of the next world. The Dubna Magid, who answered every question with a parable. He one time asked a question about this. He says, how come, someone asked him, such a small delivery that you have to do, Ashrei. How long does it take Ashrei? They're short little verses, short. You have to take a minute and a half. So you get a minute and a half times 3, okay? So it's like 4.5 minutes or whatever it is, 5 minutes at most to say Ashrei, that's it. So for 5 minutes a day, muftach lo, guaranteed citizen of the next world. So someone has to do the Magid. By the way, whenever anybody has to do the Magid a question, he answered with a parable. Matter of fact, they asked him, Rebbe, how come every time we ask you a question, you answer with a parable? He says, I have a parable for that too. His parable was, he says that Emes was walking down the street, but he was naked. He didn't have any clothing. And everywhere he went, he got into a plane, he went to a store, he came into shul, he made people very, very uncomfortable. And a naked guy walks in like, what is this, the Schwitz? Well, get out of here. Everybody makes everybody uncomfortable. He says, but he had a friend, and his friend's name was Moshel, or his Hebrew name, his English name was Parable. And he says, listen, he says, I have a store filled with suits. He says, I'll give you something, nice form fit with a nice tie, and we'll suit you up very nice. He says, and everywhere you go, he says, people will be comfortable with you until they get to know you a little bit better. He says, that's how it is. He says, I want to say the truth, but if I say the truth too direct, people are not going to accept it, so I have to dress it up in a parable. So when I asked him about how come Kol Omer Tehillah David Shlosh Pamim 3 times a day, Muftach Lo Shu Ben Olam Haba, he says, so why such a large promise for such a small investment, such a small delivery? And listen what he said. He says, a fellow came to the doctor and he was hacking away with a sneeze and a wheeze and a cough, and it was terrible. And he said, doctor, what do I do? He said, I got the flu. The doctor said, oh, you know what you got? He says, I know what you got. He says, you know what? Fill out this prescription. He says, I guarantee that's going to go away. Take this medicine 3 times a day. He says, thank you, doctor. Guy comes back a week later, worse than ever. Hacking and wheezing and sneezing and, He says, you said it was going to get better. It doesn't get better. I'm taking the medicine for a week. The doctor says, let me see the he says, it's the right medicine. He tells me, I asked him, how do you take the medicine? You take it 3 times a day? Yes. He says, how do you take the medicine? You take the first pill in the morning, you go, I chew it, and I spit it out. I take the next pill later on, I chew it, and I spit it out. I take the 3rd pill, I chew it, and I spit it out. He said, that's how you take the pill? I take the pill. Take the pill. You take it, swallow it with a drink of water. He says, and let it become part of you. Chew it, you swallow it, whatever it is, and let it become a part of your release into your bloodstream and become a part of your system. You just don't chew it and spit it out. He says the same thing when it comes to Ashrei. Yeah? He said, you take the words and you chew and spit them out. Yeah? He said that it doesn't have the medicinal effect. But if a person's going to take the words and he's going to sip it like a hot tea, Ashrei Yoshrei Beisecha, oh yeah, Lukas Allah. And then we get to the letter Kuf, and what does it say? Vatov Hashem L'kol, right? We get to the letter Kuf, and what does it say? Karov Hashem L'kol Karav. And then it continues, Kol Asher Yikra'uhu Be'emes. Somebody calls out in truth. And here's this fella, he called out in truth. It shouldn't surprise us if we're saying Ashrei 3 times a day. He called out in truth for the first time in his life, even though he hadn't gone to a formal shir in prayer, right? And 3 steps forward, he said, hello, key, give me my keys. And there were his keys, because he meant it. He meant business. That's what it's all about. Habotech b'Hashem, chesed yosef avenu. He came and he turned to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, even in desperation, and even with a chutzpah, and he got answered. Yeah? And if the story sounds like it's on Le'ever Hayam, it's on the other side of the ocean, it is. I'll tell you the same story over here, the same story. You can tell me the same story. So there was a couple that had gone to a couple of seminars, and they became frum. That we knew, and I was giving, and we had a group that were giving shiurim in their house where they were living in Riverdale. Subsequently, they moved to Muncie. Their kids were going to had just like 3 or 4 months earlier had changed from public school now to yeshiva. And the father, Steve, tells me this story that the work arrangement was that his wife had a job that kept her at work later on, and he came home earlier. So when he came home early, so he not only picked up his kids, but he picked up some of the other neighbors' kids, and he would shepherd them in a park in Riverdale, in the Bronx. Riverdale is the Bronx. The people in Riverdale don't want to say it, but it's the Bronx, okay? And he had these kids out in the park over there, and at the end of their, at a certain designated time, so kids, time to go home, homework, settle down, let's get it together. So he brought the kids back in. So before he'd leave the park, so the Gemara says, that a person is always feeling for his wallet, to always make sure. So the person feels for his keys too. So before he leaves the park, he's got all the kids there. He says, okay, let's go. He reaches into his pocket, and he realizes, I can't find my keys. This is the story the guy tells me. It's not over here, it's not in this pocket, it's not in the other pocket. It's not over here, it's not over there. Where is it? There's a little dance you do when you can't find your keys. Maybe it fell into the cuff, maybe it fell into the lining. He can't find the keys. And the kid said, well, are we going? He said, no, I can't find my keys. They lost them here. I came in with the keys. I locked up and I came out here, and we've been out here the whole time, and now I can't find my keys. And they said, okay, the doorman will let us in. He said, doorman will let us into the building. He says, but an apartment, he says, I have food on the stove. It's going to burn. Mommy's not home for another 2 hours. I can't leave here without my keys. So they're all standing over there, and the father's very anxious because he doesn't have the keys. And when the father gets anxious, the kid starts to feel even more so amplified, the anxiety that the father is projecting. He said, there's this little kid that was 3-4 months now in Hebrew day school for the first time. Again, not a formal davener really. And he's watching his father get very, very upset that he doesn't have his keys. And what does the kid do? As the father's sort of sitting there and, feeling disturbed and because he doesn't have the keys, the little boy takes the ball that he'd been playing with, the little tennis ball that he was having a catch with his friend a few moments earlier, and he holds it to his heart like you and I would hold a siddur or a sefer tehillim. And he closes his eyes and he says, Hashem, he says, help my father find his keys, please. Help my father find his keys, with sincerity. And then when he's done, he turns this way and that way. He takes the ball, heave-ho, and he throws it as far as he can in one direction, and he goes trotting after the ball. When he goes to pick up the ball, there's the ball touching his father's keys. And he says, Abba, here's the keys. Father says, where'd you find the keys? And he told him the story. Again, it shouldn't surprise us because we have the premise over here. Habatech b'Hashem, chesed yisavenu, v'korav Hashem, l'kol korav. Hashem is close to all who call him. Kol asher yikra'uhu be'emes. That if a person gives a call, and he gives a call that's in truth, and he really means business, then a Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to be close to him. That's what it's all about. It's unbelievable. That's the concept of Bitachon. Now I'm going to tell you a crazy story. Okay? And maybe we'll finish up with this. I don't know. I don't want to keep everybody too late into the night. But what's that? It's early. The night is young, and so are we. Okay. This is. I'm going to title this story. I don't understand it. It's a story I don't understand. It's true. I was there, but I don't understand it. But I will. But I do understand it, and I'm going to explain it. And the story goes like this. That one weekday morning, a Rebbe I used to learn with in the morning. We were learning at that time Chovos Levavos in the morning, And sometimes when you get those early morning sessions, if you had a good night's sleep, even a pretty good night's sleep, somehow the morning is very fresh for learning. And the Rebbe was saying over something from, again, Sefer Chovos Halevavos, which is unbelievable. It's an atomic bomb, the Sefer. He was saying over something that, he says, no one can, it says in a number of different places, he says, a person has to have installed into their mind the following notion: nobody can help you, and nobody can hurt you, unless it comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Nobody can help you, and nobody can hurt you, unless it comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Well, I'm tempted to look for something over here in the Chumash, but I'll look for it later on. And at that time, I think the Rebbe told us. He said, and what is it based upon? It's based upon the notion. He quotes the pasuk, "Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad," that everything is one. And somehow it clicked in my brain. Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's one author, one reality. Ein od milvado, efezul asod, nothing other than the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So what is this? There's some other independent force other than a Kodesh Baruch Hu? No, he said, and it clicked in my mind. You're right. Nobody can help you, and nobody can hurt you unless it comes directly from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Beautiful. So I understood it later on. We got into some davening. We did some other learning afterwards, and they went home. And my wife says, so what you learned this morning? I said, nobody can help you, nobody can hurt you during breakfast time, unless you come directly, Pastor, catch up, please. This is great. Unless you come directly from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. She goes, what about tzaddik v'ralo? Yes, sometimes you have a tzaddik, bad things happen. You have a rush of a tovlo. Okay, no, we didn't talk about that. That's a good question. And suddenly my mind is already muddled. I'm into the day already. I'm starting to get confused, and I'm not so clear. The crystal has now been shattered, and I'm not so clear. Later on that day, I'm going to the Bronx. Here I am back in the Bronx to learn with a real estate attorney who lives right in the shadow of Yankee Stadium, 161st and Grand Concourse. But if you go to 163rd, there's a courthouse up there. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You're not going to implicate yourself. The criminal courthouse that's up there, right? Yeah. Okay. So we won't turn the camera on you to tell you. It's already time to say, there he is. No. So he has his law practice right nearby, and very often, when I got there, I know right away I have to park 3 blocks away because there's only double and triple parking right next to the courthouse. But as you get a few blocks away, so it's okay. So I went 2 or 3 blocks away, and there's double and triple parking 3 blocks away. It's a busy day. I have to go around another hakafa, and I go around, and there's still double and triple parking even more blocks away. And now I realize, after taking this trip around the block a couple of times, I'm late. I don't like to be late. I'm hustling to get there on time, and I'm trying to get to this fellow to have this Gemara learning appointment with him. And I go 5 blocks away. 5 blocks away, there's a burnt out street, where every building, fell. Jewish lightning. I don't know what the cause was. Like one guy said to the other, I heard about the fire in your business. He goes, shh, it's tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know what the story is. But these buildings were down. And there was. It looked like Dresden bombing. Like there was one geschmetted, one destroyed building after the other, and there was plenty of parking on this block. Yeah. So I decided in the middle of the block, I'm going to pull up there and I'm going to park my car. No problem. There is one other car, not really a car. It was up on soap boxes on those little milk crates. And all the guts were taken out. It was like last year's a turkey from Thanksgiving was already carved and eaten out already. There was just the hull of a car. So I said, listen, I'm driving, describe what kind of car I was driving. I'm driving the same type of yeshivish car, a jalopy. What have I got to lose? I got nothing to lose but my car. That's it, So I parked in the middle of the block, and I take out my big Chosn Shas, and I'm marching down to go meet this guy, to go learn with him. And I get halfway down the block, halfway to the corner where there's a little Gucci Frito store in the corner, one of those little, whatever it is, little Italian bodegas, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, around the corner comes 3 guys, 3 Spanish guys. It was like out of West Side Story. Na 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 na. And the worst thing that happened in New York, I don't have to tell you guys, that you don't want to happen, is that they saw me seeing them, seeing me, seeing them, seeing me, seeing them, seeing them. Like there was like that lock eye moment where they became aware that I was aware, that they were aware that I was aware, that they were aware of me. And I felt that they're looking at me like fleischiks. They're looking at me like a steak already. And I said, uh-oh. I was thinking, I got this big Gemara over here. I said, these guys might, come after me. There's nobody else around. This is like isolated lit. And I said, maybe I'll start to just walk casually back to the car. I said, but that's, that would betray fear. These guys smell fear. They're going to jump all over me. I said, something? Maybe I'll, just sort of start to casually walk across the other side of the street. I said, no, then they'll think he's got diamonds. He's a Jewish guy. He got diamonds 47th Street. Let's go, and that's good. And I said, no. I said, I got no other choice. I got to keep on moving down to the corner. I'm too far away from the car. I'm too close to the corner. Too close to them. They're coming at me already. I said, I got no place to go. I got to keep on going straight. And then I reminded myself, the morning, right? Nobody can hurt you. And nobody can help you unless it comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nobody can help you and nobody can hurt you. Either way, unless it comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What do I have to worry about? It's just me and Hashem anyway. Ein od milvado. Ef is uloso. Hashem roi lo echsar binos desha yar b'seini. This is most beautiful. I suddenly got myself wrapped up in this bubble. I could hear the music behind me. I just felt like I was in like this beautiful space and these guys were off in the distance, like the neighbor's dog that was barking. It was just so far away, and I was in a spiritually elevated place. I started even fantasizing. I say, wow. What's the worst that could happen? Is they could take me. That means it was my time. That's all. If a HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to take me, it's not them taking me. I don't have to be afraid of them. They'll take me. And maybe they'll put a knife through the Gemara, and they'll name a street after me, like Rabbi Akiva or something like that. I'll die, a martyr, with a knife through a chassan shas, like wow, I even started to feel good about it, this is cool, this is actually, and I was getting closer to them, and their voices were getting louder as they were like, they're bantering back and forth, and I can't understand what they're saying from the distance even. And I started to feeling so good about it. Ein od milvado. Ef is uloso. Nobody can help you. Nobody can hurt you unless it comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was really quite an amazing, the preparation I had in the morning saved me and prepared me for that moment over there. As we're getting closer. And that moment of, what's going to happen when we actually, meet on the street and we pass. So as I was going there, I said, okay, I'm not going to even pay attention who's going to move for what. Suddenly they split, two went on one side, one on the other side, and like a wave that passed over me, and I can actually hear the words that they were saying that close in their Spanglish, as they were passing by me. And one was saying to the other, as they were passing by, man, if God don't want something to happen to you, man, it ain't going to happen. And that's what they were saying. If God don't want something to happen to you, man, it ain't going to happen. And after they passed, I stopped and I turned around and I watched them walk into the distance. And I came home and I told my wife, I said, you want to hear what happened? It's amazing. Were they saying that because I was thinking that? Or was I thinking that because they were saying that? Or what was happening over there? And I said to my wife, and she goes, those three Puerto Rican guys, they understood it. But we didn't understand it this morning ourselves. She was like, we were philosophically distracted this morning, and they were locked in on this concept that if God don't want something to happen, man, it ain't going to happen. But the truth is, it's a beautiful piece in the Nefesh HaChaim that says the following thing, and I'm sure most people are aware of this. It says the following thing: U'be'emes, and in truth, listen to this. Hu inyan gadol usugula nifla. This is a great wonder, and it's a wondrous thing. Lahaser levatam elav kol dinim uretzonas acherim. If a person wants to nullify all kinds of other effects of anything that might happen to a person, shelo yuchlu, that they're not able lishlod bo, they're not able to affect him. Velo yaser shum roshim klal, they can't even make an impression on you at all. How is a person going to remain safe? Listen to this. Kisha adam koveya belibo, when a person is going to establish, he's going to affix, and he's going to install in his heart, saying, "Hello." Hu Elokim Hamiti, isn't Hashem the true God? Ve'ein od milvado, and there's nothing other than Hashem Yisborach Shum Koyach Ba'olam. There's no independent force in the world. V'kol olamos klal, in all the worlds, higher and lower worlds. V'kol malay rak afduso Poshet Yisborach Shemo. Everything is the simple unity of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. From our point of view, we see distracted lights and different sizes and shapes and instruments. From a Kadosh Baruch Hu's angle, everything like a one-way mirror is perfect and straight. Umavata believable bittul gamar, and the person is going to nullify in his heart completely and say, the ein mashgiach klal shum koyach v'ratzon b'olam. There's no other force in the world. Umeshabed umedabek tower machshavaso rak la'adon yochid baruch hu. He's going to now attach his heart only in his thoughts only to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ken yasbiku yizbaruch biyad. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of him in his hands. Umemela yizbatlo melav kol ha'koyach v'ratzonos sheba'olam. Then all the forces in the world are going to leave him alone. Shelo yuchlo lo poil shum davar klal, and nothing's going to be able to affect him when the person is one-on-one with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's what he says. Nothing can affect. If God don't want something to happen to you, man, it ain't going to happen. There's very many stories about different people who went through Nazi Germany, the Brisker Rav with his son, and they were concentrating on this, and they were invisible on a train. And then the son started to become distracted, and then the Nazis started to approach him, and they said, concentrate. And they got back into the concentration, that there's nothing. Migdal Oz Shem Hashem. That the name of Hashem is a place where a person goes into that place. A person lives with a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's what Bitachon Hashem means. The person is living in the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. They're living with a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Tzaddikim go into that place and they're sheltered in that place. That's what it means. I'll read you another piece from the Me'or Naim. We'll finish up with this. We've got to finish up with this. This is quotes the Baal Shem Tov. This is really the same thing. The Baal Shem Tov is saying the same thing that the Nefesh HaChaim, the student of the Vilna Gaon, says, but he's saying it in a reverse language. The same thing, the same concept. V'chein Amar HaBaal Shem Tov, and so says the Baal Shem Tov. Listen to this. Zal. Shekola b'chadim afilu b'bali chaim ha'megi la'adam. We live in a world of terrorism, by the way. The ism of the world is terrorism, which means that there's a movement to intimidate and to frighten people, right? That's the ism of the day. There's communism, socialism, and nowadays it's terrorism. Afilu b'bachayim, he says, shekola b'chadim afilu b'balechayim. Hamagil la'adam, all these different frights that reach a person. Hu kavanas Hashem baruch hu lahav chidu. It's a Kodesh Baruch Hu's intention, because there's nothing other than the Kodesh Baruch Hu to frighten him. He says, why? That he should come to experience Yiras Hashem. That's why he's coming to him. As if the person's smart, he's going to contemplate on this. Then any of those things that frighten him none of those things that are frightening him are going to hurt him, because he got the lesson of what that thing was coming to do. It was a message that was sent by Kodesh Baruch Hu. And he says, "Umachmas shebetchila haisa kavanas Hashem is Baruch Hu laafchido lo mishum sheyanshu ayidei apachet." Kodesh Baruch Hu's intention was not to punish him, but to frighten him. Right? Ki im mafachet zeh yavo liyir v'apachet mi Hashem is Baruch Hu. Kodesh Baruch Hu's intention that he should come to fear Hashem. V'chein also adam, and same if the person does this, then he won't be hurt. Avalima adam lo yizbonim, as that the person doesn't think about this. V'lo yipached v'yir me Hashem. He doesn't have fright from Hashem. Az bo me'alav harash ha'ayim mefached v'meno. Then that thing that dog that came barking at him, instead of being afraid of Hashem, then the dog has teeth. Then that paper tiger becomes real, and his claws become real. That's what he says over here. So Kodesh Baruch Hu is sending this thing in order to cause the person to become frightful of Hashem. That's why I was looking for the spot in Chumash. There's two places it says later on in Chumash. I don't think I'll be able to find it so quickly over here. But in Sefer Devarim it says twice that when the army is going to surround you and they're going to attack you, it says Lo sira mehem, don't be afraid from them. Okay? Don't be afraid of them. So Rabbeinu Yonah counts this as one of the 613 mitzvahs. It says, don't be afraid. I remember going to Reb Mordechai Schwab, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha, the Tzaddik of Muncie, and he's telling me, Rabbeinu Yonah says this is one of the 613 mitzvahs. I remember seeing later on Rabbeinu Yonah also. He says, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Somehow the way he said it calmed me. I had nothing to be afraid of. It made it was easy. But I remember thinking later on, you can't tell somebody who's emotional about something, don't be afraid. Right? You tell a kid, don't be afraid. He's going to be afraid. Lightning, thunder comes. Oh, don't be afraid. He's afraid. Can't tell somebody don't be afraid. Doesn't make sense. Like tell somebody who's angry, don't become angry. What do you mean don't get angry? Leave me alone. What are you talking about? Get out of my face. The Gemara says don't confront somebody when they're angry. When they're emotional, don't confront people when they're emotional. So don't be afraid. Maybe beforehand you're not afraid. Okay, don't be afraid. We'll reset. We'll set our mind not to be afraid of these things. But it says, Lo sir mehem, the enemy is going to be upon you. Don't be afraid of them. That's what the Gemara. That's what the Chumash says. So how can you say don't be afraid from them? So I was thinking like this to be medayik based upon what the Baal Shem Tov says over here. It says Lo sir mehem. It doesn't say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of them. Be afraid of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So if a person has a fright in the world, a person has something that he's fearful, don't be fearful of that thing, be fearful of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. He says if you're fearful of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, then that thing falls away. It doesn't have the ability to hurt us, doesn't have the ability to touch us. That's the concept of Bitachon. Bitachon means, part we're talking about over here, is to recognize that everything is coming from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Bein l'tov, bein l'ra, the whole Purim story also had to do. Kol po'el Hashem la'menehu, everything Hashem does, He does for His own good. Afilu rasha l'yom rishaso. But how we invest ourselves. If a person believes in Bitachon Hashem, he's going to invest in his relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. If he's going to invest in his relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, then he knows that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to take care of his part. It's not a question of doing nothing. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is taking care of everything. Let's all be passive, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to take care of it. Then knowing that Bitachon is a relationship that I have with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, I'm going to do everything that's in my part in order to make sure that I do my part that's within my circle of influence. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, which is the Kodesh Baruch Hu's business. But give me the courage to change the things I can, to do what I can in the area that's my circle of influence. Then that's Bitachon. Bitachon is I'm doing everything to establish a strong relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and knowing that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to take care of his part. I don't have to do the boss's part. If I work, I know my boss is going to pay me. I don't have to worry, you're going to pay me, you're going to pay me, you're going to pay me, you're going to pay me. I'm going to pay you. Don't sit and worry whether I'm going to do my part or not. You do your part, and I'll take care of my part. I'll take care of the payments. I'll take care of the payroll. Don't try to do the boss's job. You do your job, and let the Kodesh Baruch Hu do his job. So if I'm Bitachon Hashem, I'm going to do Avodas Elokim, I'm going to do my job, and let HaKadosh Baruch Hu do his job. But if I'm not Bitachon Hashem, then I'm not going to end up doing, I'm going to end up trying to do a Kodesh Baruch Hu's job. I'm going to end up doing every job in the world except the job that I was put here to do. And then it makes me even more worried and more nervous because I can't control everything else that's going on in the universe. So being Bitachon Hashem doesn't mean doing nothing and sitting and being a philosopher and thinking that Hashem is doing everything. It means that I know that I have to do my part to have a relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Once I have a real relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, that I'm doing what the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants me to do, and I'm trying the maximum that I possibly can, then I know that anything that's not in my realm, I'm leaving up to my partner. My partner takes care of everything else. This is what I take care of, and my partner takes care of everything else. Who's my partner? If I realize that my partner is a Kodesh Baruch Hu, then I don't have to worry about anything else. They said one of the previous Lubavitch Rebbes that he will finish up. He was not Rabbi Nachman Mendel, his father. That was in Russia. He was in a prison. He was being pistol whipped by an officer. Because he was like, whatever, he had a gun in his neck, he was trying to shake him up. And I think the story says he told him, you could put that toy away. He wasn't effective in stirring his fear in him. He says, you can put that away. He says, that can only frighten, he told him, somebody that believes in one world and many gods. He says, but I believe in one God and two worlds. He says, so it can't affect me. Right? Worst thing can happen, he can take me to the next world. But I'll still be with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. You can't take the Kodesh Baruch Hu away from me. Right? Right? If somebody believes in one world but in many gods, so it's the gun, it's politics, it's the the new mayor, it's the new this, it's the Islamists, it's the this ism, and this is, there's no isms. It's one God, all is Him. That's the only ism. Everything is from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So this is the concept of a person. Therefore, the flip side is if somebody doesn't believe in a Kodesh Baruch Hu, a person can't be worry free unless he believes in a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Means that if a person believes in the trust in the Kodesh Baruch Hu, then he can be calm. He can be all the time one-on-one with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's the premise over here. He can be calm. He can know that we do our part. Lechem Yom Yom. That's the mun is this week's parsha. Klai Yisrael sitting in the desert. Ein Torah nitna ela lo klei mun. It's an amazing thing. We order food out these days. We order the groceries the grocery stores are competing. And the Torah talks about the Gemara says that how big a tzaddik was, could be determined. It can be how close the mun came to the door. Where I live, so you don't have to go out to the grocery store. You fax in the order. My wife faxes in the order. The next thing you know, you got a couple of big galut guys. You got to knock on the door, and they carry up and they carry the stuff right into the kitchen. And you give them an extra $1 or something like that. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much. And they go, good night, thank you. And they're happy to come schlep in these big boxes over here. And it comes in, and I have to tell them again, we have to, to unpack the bags. We have to unpack it. The mun came right into our house. The mun came right into the house. And
Carry-on does it.
What?
Carry-on does it too.
Yeah, it comes right into the house. Now, all you have to do is put it into the shelf. All you have to do is eat it. What?
Why can't they? If you're a supersonic, then your deliveries would be on the shelf already.
What's that?
It'd be already on the shelf, right?
Right. So we're doing even better than the tzaddikim in the midbar, by having it come into the house. It's something, and yet we can find complainers about, what you have to put it onto the shelf, and it has to be, and it's already prepared food, and you have to pay for it. Yeah. So we have to go out and work and run around sometimes to pay for it. Yeah. Right. But the emes is the food comes, which is really quite unbelievable. And there's fruit on the shelves. There's all kinds of different things. So Baruch Hashem. Mamash min hashamayim. Okay. So Baruch Hashem. So it's no less min hashamayim for us. Min haaretz is no less min hashamayim. That was the whole point of the mun. Min haaretz is no different than min hashamayim. It's no less miraculous. Min haaretz min hashamayim. Okay.